Fifth highest 3-and-out percentage, 42%. Packers defense in the second half this season. They've allowed 12 points fewest in the NFL, forced 5 turnovers, one behind the Patriots for most in the NFL. But their offense has struggled. So is it a Jekyll and Hyde team? What should we expect tomorrow night? Right here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob Demovsky, ESPN NFL Nation, with us in Green Bay. I know some people that just went to Green Bay. I got a picture from a friend of mine of Lambeau Field.
Very
there
cool.
right now. Just got it sent to my phone.
It's on my bucket list.
Rob Demovsky is there. He'll be there tomorrow night, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Welcome, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
A lot of panic here, man. I mean, the Eagle fans are already in that, must-win mode. And a lot of people are looking at this Green Bay defense. Is this something when you entered the year at camp said this defense is going to be pretty good?
Well, we wrote and talked about in the spring and summer that the defense might have to carry this team for a while, just given the fact that Rodgers is going through a new offense with a new head coach. And they put so many resources, guys, into this defense. I mean, they had to after, how they've struggled in years past. But I don't think any of us expected that it would be quite this good this early. They paid Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith a lot of money to rush the quarterback, and they've done it. They paid Adrian Amos a bunch of money to be a leader in the secondary, and he came up with a huge interception against his old team, the Bears, to clinch that game in week 1. They drafted Jair Alexander last year to be a shutdown cornerback, and he's been that. And then the 2 first-round picks this year, Darnell Savage, a safety from Maryland, and Rashawn Gary, a pass rusher from Michigan, have also made plays. So, yeah, it's been a little bit, maybe a little better than we expected, but this had to be a defensive team, at least early, in order to buy them some time to get the offense going.
Yeah, their offense has struggled. How do they plan on kind of incorporating Adams back into this offense and getting them back, on the same page? It looks like Rodgers and his receivers aren't just clicking yet.
Yeah, here's a couple problems. One, Adams was so good last year with 111 catches and double-digit touchdowns for the third year in a row that he was going to be a focal point. But the second part of it is they just don't have a lot of other weapons. At least they haven't developed any yet. They've got a deep threat guy in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but he's been kind of just a home run hitter, but not a lot of singles and doubles. And then Jimmy Graham it looks like he's past his prime and probably was a mistake bringing him back for a second year. So there's just a lack of weapons there. I don't know, how they're going to really get over that this year. They might not. You can't have everything. They put all these resources into the defense that it was going to leave them short on offense. So, it's going to be up to Rodgers to sort of, make something out of nothing. But until he gets fully comfortable with this offense, and it's a pretty significant change. They're asking him to stay in the pocket a lot more than he did in the previous offense. And until he sort of figures out how he can get Adams the ball and get Aaron Jones the ball, there's probably going to be more struggles than there is just dominant drives. So I'm not, they definitely want to get Adams the ball more. I'm just not sure it's going to be, this offense is going to be anywhere near as explosive this season as we've seen out of the great Rodgers-led offenses in the past.
Yeah, 13 touchdowns for Adams last year. Rob Demovsky covers the Packers. How is the Rodgers LaFleur relationship going out there? Is that something that you guys keep an eye on, or is that kind of blown up?
No, it's something to watch. And the last 2 games there have been things noteworthy. I'm not going to say there have been confrontations because I think that would take it too strong, but it sort of got some publicity against the Vikings when they barked at each other 2 weeks ago. But I think the thing that people missed was after that happened, LaFleur went down and sat next to Rodgers on the bench, and they hashed things out. And I think that was good. And then this past week there was a series where Rodgers came off the field after a 3-and-out and wasn't happy, and the same thing happened. And I think Rodgers does really respect him. I mean, are they going to have differences? Sure. But I think right now it's been a good working relationship. Rodgers respects him. He likes him as a guy. Heck, they're only like 4 years apart in age. So I do think there's a connection there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be, slap each other on the back and everything's great because, Rodgers is a super demanding guy. He's demanding of his receivers. He's demanding of his coaches. And look, the great quarterbacks can be difficult to work with, and I don't think he's an exception to that.
Rob, what stands out when looking at the Eagles from an opponent's perspective? Like, what's being talked about there as potential matchups that Green Bay can take advantage of, whether it's on the Eagles' offensive side of the ball or the defensive side?
Well, I think the words that you've heard here in the short week have been that the Eagles just have had some missed opportunities. That's at least what they're trying to sell themselves on, to prop up the Eagles, and maybe that they're better than a 1-2 team, is just they've had some opportunities and they've let them slip away. Especially the Atlanta game, and then how it ended in Detroit last week, or against Detroit last week. So look, these guys are still trying to figure themselves out. And one thing that we've heard both Matt LaFleur and defensive coordinator Mike Pettin say this week is that the Packers have to play sort of their greatest hits this week. And what they mean by that is that you don't have a lot of time to prepare, so you have to pare down what you're going to do and just go with a handful of your best ideas, your best matchups that you think you can exploit. You just can't get overcomplicated with a game plan when you're on such a short week like this against a team that really, there's not a lot of familiarity with. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last time they played was in 2016.
Yeah, 16.
And that was the game that started the run the table. It was leading up to that week that Rodgers said, I think, what were they, 5-7, and everything was looking bad. And Rodgers said, hey, I think this team can run the table. And darned if they didn't go all the way to the NFC Championship game before they lost that year. So I just think this week it's been more about what the Packers can do themselves, and not necessarily worrying a ton about the Eagles. I mean, they even said this week, look, we put some time into the Eagles, in the preseason in terms of the study, because they knew it was going to be a short week. But there's just not a lot you can do when you're coming off of a Sunday game into a Thursday game.
What scares the Green Bay Packers, in your opinion, for the Eagles' offense? We've talked about it a lot here. Injuries are a big factor. The drops in the Detroit Lions game have been the storyline, but they're getting Alshon Jeffrey back. Dallas Goedert seems to be a go. Is there anything, when breaking down the Eagles' offense, you're saying, this could be a problem?
Well, two things, I think. One is the quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback that they've played this year. I mean, Trubisky was terrible in week 1 against them. Kirk Cousins was terrible in week 2, and Flacco's at the point of his career where he's just a dink and dunk game manager. This is the start of a stretch where they're going to play Wentz, Prescott, Matthew Stafford, who's off to a very good start and has always been viewed as a talented quarterback. And then a little bit later in October, they have Mahomes and Rivers. So the quarterback, definitely scares them more than what they've faced in the past. And, the key matchup, I think, is the tight ends. You mentioned Goddard, but Ertz, on the Packers linebackers, which Blake Martinez has been a really good inside linebacker. But they've sort of had to mix and match the guy next to him because of injuries, and they're basically playing. They're playing two guys there. One, B.J. Goodson, who they signed off the street like 2 days before the opener, and then they were using a DB in a hybrid linebacker role. So, I would think that the Eagles would try to isolate their tight ends. Try to take advantage of those matchups, and I think that's where the Packers have some concerns heading into this game. It's those two areas.
All right. Now, let me ask you this regarding the Eagles and seeing them play the Lions, as you guys are very familiar with the Lions.
Yeah.
Just listening to, fodder around town, do people like, hey, the Eagles lost to the Lions? Is it a team that maybe people are overlooking a little?
Well, I certainly, did not expect the Lions to be undefeated after 3 weeks. Now, I know they have a tie, but, look, they were a disaster last year. The Matt Patricia thing looked like it was going nowhere fast. But the one thing, like I said, with the quarterback, when you talk to scouts around the league, and I try to check in with these guys whenever possible, they've always raved about Stafford's arm and his ability. It's just, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to put everything together. And I know the Packers have been down the last couple of years, but the Lions have kind of owned them. The last couple of years, a couple of those games, Rodgers didn't play because of the collarbone injury, and I guess it was 17, and had a concussion in the game here to finish the season last year. And the Lions just, they seem to be one of those teams that's capable of playing really down to their opponent or really up to the caliber of their opponent. So it's a team that I think at the end of the year, that game could look a little bit different. If the Lions end up, 9-6-1 or 10-5-1, maybe you think, oh, boy, that wasn't such a bad loss after all. So, but again, it's so early to tell. But this division, the only two losses in this division are by the Packers that they've given to the Vikings and the Bears. Otherwise, this division's won every other game, won or tied the rest of their games.
Rob Demovsky covers the Packers. The Eagles will be in Green Bay tomorrow night. You can listen to that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick have the call. 8:20 pregame with Tony Bruno starts at 6. Rob, thank you so much.
All right, guys, take care. Enjoy the game.
Yeah, Rob Demovsky, like all guests, appear to be the Boardwalk Honda hotline.